When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of a storm, there's a golden sky and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk.
A very good morning to everybody in Malaysia, all across Malaysia. Good morning, Father.
Good morning, Patrick, and good morning to our listeners this morning. Welcome back to Catholics at Home on this Saturday morning. We have this appointment every Saturday morning at 10:30 to bring you some interesting topics of conversation.
Yeah, so that you'll never walk alone on Saturday morning. At least you'll have the team here on Catholics at Home bringing you some interesting content. And Father, today we've got really hot off the press, right? The topic that everybody is talking about, especially since yesterday.
Yeah, Patrick, I mean, we didn't plan for this. I look at it as providential. It so happened that, we had a kind of a PM speech, and we wanted to talk a little bit about where Malaysia is heading in this. We already have a health crisis. We're having an economic crisis. We're having a political crisis. There's a kind of a fatigue, on the ground. So perhaps we thought we'd talk about this. So by divine providence, we were able to engage in this conversation in a more profound way, having seen what happened yesterday. I
Yes.
think before we kind of jump in and bring in our guests, I'm sure everybody is kind of waiting to listen to our guest this morning. You know, the opening song. Of course, you know, as you said, You Never Walk Alone. I'm sure all the Liverpool fans are all jumping for joy,
Yes.
including our tech team, Alex and Mark. I'm sure
And Mark, yes,
they're
yes.
probably grinning from year to year. But it's a very powerful song, and I think we our resident team in Catholics at Home have come up with this song, you know, just to offer hope at this time. And I think during this pandemic, this song has been played in so many different ways in so many parts of the world, just to tell people, don't give up, you know, hang in there. You know, there is a light, just that we need to hold on, you know, to one another, to offer each other support. And this is our contribution to all our listeners out there, that, you know, don't give up, you know, that we will cross this hurdle.
Yes, amen, amen. And I think very importantly, as we are going through this process, we of getting our double dosages of getting vaccinated, and the hope is really that when we hit that critical number of herd immunity, we can all get back to some sense of normalcy, you know, and that's something that we can all hope for, lah. But we also need to address all these issues that we are dealing with, like what you said, all this fatigue that's coming, hitting us all at once. So maybe we want to bring in our two
Yeah,
special guests.
maybe just to call out a few people who are here this morning.
Oh,
Our usual guests who tune in every Saturday morning just to
so
say hi to
today,
them.
oh yes, I see all our some of our regulars there. Philomena Peterson is here. Hi from Divine Mercy Shah. Gita, good morning. And Arisa, good morning. And Dutch and Duchess Mark, good morning. All those from the dioceses of Miri, Malacca, Johor, Penang. Good morning to everybody. Christine Koo, Janet Chan, Balingun, Ida Kulong. Good morning to all of y'all. So please, guys, as we are live now, please continue to share the link and like and subscribe us, whether you're following us on YouTube or you're following us on Facebook. Please continue to share, because we've got lots and lots of clips that's available on YouTube and also on Facebook. And we'll be coming up with even shorter clips, excerpts from our interviews that we will also be posting. So please continue to like and share, so that we can hit our, the target subscribers to this channel.
Yeah,
So
I know, just listening. I mean, Patrick, it's about 18 months since we have been online, since we came online. I think we are on episode 72. I think this week, we've been faithfully keeping. So we need the support of everyone to keep us motivated, also to keep us going.
yes,
And to share this video so that they can be of some help to somebody who's listening, and to be able to inspire others. So don't forget to share, subscribe the videos that we have both on Facebook and also our YouTube channels.
and every time that we go live, please continue to comment. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your comments, your questions. Even today, when we're having our show, if you got any questions, please just put it in the comment section, and we will try to bring it up to our guests and try to answer your questions today. All
just
right.
before we go, talk about comments, Patrick. Yeah, just very quickly, I want to just jump in and say, there are many ways of making comments, and we always welcome constructive comments.
Yes.
Suggestions to help us. And I think we are a Christian platform. Let's be kind to one another. Not that we don't accept. Everyone has the right to their own view, but I think let's be constructive. Let's be proactive to help one another. And I think these are the channels that we offer to ask people to show our Christian virtues of kindness, of gentleness, of compassion, and to share with one another.
Yep, that's true. So maybe since we've got our two guests waiting offline,
Yes.
maybe we can bring them into the conversation. Let's welcome our two special guests for today. YB Kasthuri Patto. Will we bring YB first, huh?
Yeah, sure. I guess she does not need any introduction.
Yes. Those of you who know, YB Kasthuri is not new to not new to Catholics at Home. She has been our guest regularly. So welcome, YB. How are you doing?
Thank you. Good morning, Father Patrick, Thomas,
Morning.
and
And
everyone. I'm good.
and we also welcome Thomas Fann, the chairman of BERSIH 2.0. Thank you guys for, we know it's
Thank
a
you.
very, very busy time, especially today, but you guys have made it and are giving us the time to have this conversation. So we want to thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
So
I'm sure your phones have all been lighting up since last night. With what the Prime Minister announced, people must be asking you opinions. So as we mentioned, we didn't plan this to coincide with that, but it so happened. But before we jump into the hard questions, of course, YB, we saw you smiling from year to year with the opening song.
Yes.
Reflected your own team. Yeah, I'm sure we. Anyway. Right, but I think it kind of tugs the heart of what's happening around here in Malaysia, in the region, throughout the world. There is so much of despair, so much of hopelessness, helplessness. Also, the kind of a situation that we are seeing. But before we kind of jump into the conversation, YB, I think you kind of encapsulate what many Malaysians are feeling. Uh, we want to show you this little video, and I think that really, really captures what all of us are feeling. So let's just look at this. Yeah, so it's been going around, so there's nothing, there's no secret. So we just want to kind of play this to kind of bring into context what we feel. Okay. So you put your
action
head.
speaks louder than words, huh?
Yeah, so we didn't have the audio, but you actually put your head under the table and you kind of palmed your forehead. I guess even without words, that kind of says a lot. What not just what you are feeling, but what many of us are feeling. But before we get into the difficult questions, YB, what's the situation on the ground? We know that you have been doing a lot of work in your constituency with people, helping them with food. What's it been like?
Thank you, Father, and thank you for that clip. It was quite viral, and I actually can't really remember when it actually happened, but I'm guessing maybe late last year. So I think like me, many MPs, state assembly persons, and civil society, even religious leaders have been on the ground just to help families to put food on the table. Last year during the lockdown, there was an uncertainty of whether or not they'll still have their jobs, whether they'll still be able to be financially stable, or will they be able to survive the next few months to come. But today it is so dire that they don't even know if they have enough money to buy food and feed their family. So first and foremost, that's what we're doing on the ground, which is to ensure that there's enough food for my constituents. Secondly, of course, it would be to address all the specific issues, milk formulas for babies and diapers for them, adult diapers, sanitary pads for women. I mean, period poverty is something not many are talking about, and the government has yet to react and address this issue. But on the other hand, we also see business owners, crying out to us. They still have to continue servicing loans. They still have to continue paying their workers. And the F&B industry has been hit so bad. In fact, every single industry in the country has been hit very badly, from the smallest to the biggest. Except that if you're lucky to get a meaty letter, then your factory will be allowed to run. But with the exception of that, everyone else it's really hitting home, the pandemic. And I think most importantly, it's how the government has been managing the pandemic over the past 8 months. Last year was all right. We were so proud to see single digit positive cases. And that would make news on social media. All our social media posts would be like, oh, we've got one case today. And every single death that we experienced last year, I don't know if you remember, but if there was one person who died, it was like all social media posts had this crying emoji, and everyone's like with all their gifs of being so hopeless and crying and upset. And yesterday we had 277 people, and we're like, oh, but it's less than the day before. We've become so desensitized to it. And I remember last year one person died and I would just be so upset about it. I am still upset, but it's been such a daily ordeal to read this, and it's over time you just wonder when this is going to end. So we're trying to give moral support out. The Penang State government has is on route to training state assemblymen and MPs office staff to be the first point of help if someone calls and says I'm depressed and I feel like killing myself and I don't know what to do, and on at the end of my line, etc. So we're having like a few days calls just to give us a bit of insight on how do we handle these cases first before we transfer them over to civil society or experts who'll be able to counsel them better.
What are the sentiments? Right, you kind of said what's happening on the ground. What are the sentiments among your colleagues, fellow members of parliament? We have had we started off with a health crisis that led to an economic crisis, and now we are faced with. Of course, we started with a political crisis. Let's not forget, in February last year, but we are back to that. What are the sentiments among your colleagues in parliament?
At this moment, the reaction to what the Prime Minister announced yesterday, Father, is really, I would say, of uncertainty as well. While we are united in rejecting the offer by the Prime Minister, which is too little too late, but what is the way forward? How are we going to move forward on this? And it's we've never been faced with this kind of a situation before, where if you remember yesterday, the Prime Minister did mention that no single MP can command the majority of support in the House, but maybe he forgot that he too doesn't command the majority of support in the House, except that he's in a position now that he's coming out to barter and trade with us. I know I like what in essence, I like what he offered.
Maybe
Equal
just hold on,
access.
just a second, YB. We'll come to the PM speech yesterday.
Okay.
In a
Okay.
short while.
But
So
it's
I mean,
so amongst us, there's been a lot
among
of
you all,
views, opinions,
okay?
discussions.
Are you all frustrated, tired also? The
Absolutely,
people. Okay.
absolutely. It's political fatigue. It's the COVID fatigue. It's lockdown fatigue. But following what has been happening in Parliament the week before last week, and now, it's political fatigue as well. But then, at the end of the day, it is hope. You look forward to what is coming after this, and how do you strategize, and how do you go back to the drawing board and say, okay, this is what has been said, this is how we're going to react to it. At the end of the day, it is to come out of this COVID safely, this pandemic, this raging pandemic safely, and also to stabilize the political situation in the country. Mhm.
Okay, maybe from a civil society perspective, from BERSIH, maybe Thomas, you could share what are the sentiments on the ground from where you see it, from BERSIH's perspective, health, economic, and now political. What are the sentiments like?
Yeah, I think when the Sheraton move happened about 18 months ago, I think it came as a shock to many people that duly elected government like Pakatan Harapan could be toppled in this manner almost within overnight. It's actually stretched to about a week before finally there was some outcome where we saw that the government was overthrown. And I think that, in terms of democracy, I think disheartened a lot of people. People are disillusioned, and they are asking question: what is the point of voting then, in a general election when my vote can be changed midterm just by a handful of politicians who, for their own reasons, choose to defect? And I think that situation continued and in many ways exacerbated because right after that, the following month in March, we have this COVID pandemic, and the country went into the first lockdown on the 18th of March last year. And of course, with a prolonged lockdown, we have the consequence of the economic situation of people. So I think BERSIH, though we are purely electoral reform, pro-democracy watchdog, we couldn't sit back and do nothing. So what we did was that we initiated a campaign called Makan Kongsi, where the original aim was to raise money from the public to feed the homeless, but that evolved into basically what it is right now, uh, a campaign where we raise money from the public and we give small grants to the many local heroes on the ground who are looking out for the poor and needy in their midst, because these are the people who saw the need with their own eyes and they wanted to respond to feed the poor and the hungry, but they have no means of raising fund. So what Bruse has over the year is that we have built a certain reputation and support base. So we call on people to donate. The first lockdown, the 3 months of the campaign, we raised about 560,000 ringgit, and we gave out every single cent to all these local Makan Kongsi partners, we call them. Then this second time, the lockdown, we started Makan Kongsi 2.0, and Brise took a back seat and more as a supervisory role, and we put in a new team to run it, and they did it so tremendously well. And right now, 2 months into the campaign, they have raised 1.3 million ringgit and given
Wow.
out most of this money already to 100 over uh, local NGO or individuals nationwide. I think this is a program that covers the whole nation, every single state. And our criteria is very simple. We help those who are really vulnerable in need and nobody is helping them. So it includes urban poor, rural poor Malaysian, refugees, migrant workers, homeless people. All these communities are receiving some sort of help, food aid from us. I think this is what is needed right now. We need a whole society approach. Every single one. We don't just look to the politician, the elected or non-elected in our community to help us, but we as citizens, if we have any influence, we look out for our neighbors during this very difficult time. And I think what is disappointing really to a lot of Malaysians is that in the midst of this crisis, the political crisis that started with the Sheraton move never ended. There was not a moment of stability and politicking and dirty politicking and bribery to try to bring people to defect. So what Brunei has done over this period is that we look at what caused the Sheraton move, what are the political weaknesses in our current system, and then we did commission about 14 research to make recommendation to rectify, to plug all these loophole so that we can come out from this crisis, both health, economic, and political crisis, stronger, even as a country. So that is what we have been bit, busy, and but we want to say, don't lose hope. The fight is still on for our country.
We're going to come back. We're going to come back to that 14 recommendations. I'm going to put it against the 7 kind of what we call it is peace offering that was made yesterday. We'll come back to that in a short while. But YB, just want to ask you. I think Thomas alluded to it. We cannot look towards politicians. Okay, this is not directed to you in any way. We talk about there's lockdown fatigue. We talk about there's virtual fatigue. is there political fatigue, or if I may be more direct, is there politician fatigue among Malaysians?
I think there is. A lot of people are frustrated to see the direction of the country, which lacks leadership. They were frustrated when they watched Parliament, the first day of Parliament on the 26th of July. It was like a full blown shouting match. The first few hours of the day was just full of yelling at each other and all that. And people were like, these are MPs we voted for, is it? And then look at them behaving like this in Parliament. But then it also reflected how much we need political education in the country. MPs don't need to shout and scream and yell if we're given a platform to speak. And even though our opinions may differ from each other, we have a right to be heard also in Parliament. But it was interesting to see the reaction of young people, men and women on social media, who were giving their opinions on what happened on the 26th of July. But these are the ones who are privy to social media, the ones who are on social media, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. What happens to those who are not? There is a situation of whatever lah, that kind of a mood also on the ground. It doesn't matter which government is leading the country, as long as we have food to eat, as long as I get my job back, as long as my family is safe, as long as there's some hope of normalcy in the months to come. But I think therein lies the problem. It is important which government leads the country, because that government then will put the needs of the people ahead of their political survival, will put the need of the country, will prioritize fighting this pandemic together. It's so rhetoric and lip service to say, oh, we need to be in this together, we have to put our differences aside. Yes, we all have been putting our differences aside to come together. What we want to see is a plan. Is there a big grand master plan, or is there a small plan, or is there an exit plan? But you have to have something, and that's what we lack. So I'm not in denial. When I go out and meet people, I know they're frustrated. When I meet them, they say, I've lost my job, and my children have lost their jobs. We don't know where we're going to go. We haven't paid rent. How are we going to move forward from this, YB? And I feel stuck because I'm not financially able to also help them with our allocations cut when the government changed, just to keep them afloat, and that's where, like what Thomas mentioned, is the public outpouring of support. We have donors who have come forward to say that we'd like to help you to do this and that, and in return, with the money that was given by the government, we bought food baskets from small kedai runcits rather than buying them from hypermarkets and supermarkets, which already have made their money. So we invest in small kedai runcits just to keep them afloat, and they then help other smaller kedai runcits as well. So. But coming back to the political situation in the country, I hope that I hope that Malaysians still hold on to hope, and not give up. And it's also very exciting and interesting times. We see things being unraveled and revealed every day. Every day there's something new coming out. But as a lawmaker, I have many concerns of where are we going to get the money that was announced by the PM to give people. How are children going to start school in September, if that's really going to happen? How are our frontliners still working around the clock, and how do they still keep their mental health intact, and healthy at this point in time? And how are women affected by it? How are minority groups and the disabled children affected by it? How are our faith affected by it?
Yeah, do we think that you talk about people are tired, there's fatigue. I'm going to play the devil's advocate, ironically, in the sense that, do you think I allude to the fact politician fatigue? Because why I say this is, maybe Thomas can dive in here. We see young people coming out to the streets now, even in the pandemic. We have had a demonstration. Young people, we had young doctors coming out to voice out. Do you think young people have lost hope in politicians making change, that they are now taking their own future into, in a sense, into their own hands, that they want to be heard rather than running to their MP. Sorry, YB, and it in no way it's addressing anything, but I say it seems as though that, of course, even BERSIH, when we had BERSIH, that many of us were there, a lot of young people, but there's a kind of a different mood now. They are taking the bulls by its horns. Is that something that young people are frustrated? Thomas, from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, definitely a lot of people are frustrated, and young people are, some of them are taking that mindset that the politicians have failed us, the political system has failed us, we have to take back our country, we have to throw all these people out. But I just want to say that that is not uh, the view that BERSIH takes. In fact, I want to just correct a minor statement, I think, Father, that you made just now, that I said, don't look to the politician, but I said, don't just look to the politician, but all of us need to play our part as well, together actually with the politician. And for us, I think it is, we are at that point where some people, not just young people, are thinking that the politicians have failed us. Yes, there are a lot of disappointment, as Kasturi pointed out. When we look at some of the politician in parliament, the behavior of them, I mean, we have to block the ears of our children from listening to all this shameful conduct. And we try to teach our children to behave, and yet we are seeing our leaders in parliament, behaving really terribly. But I want to say that the path to nation building, the path um, to really building and contributing to this country, it is still that we need a system of government, and we need people in government. We need people in politics. So my challenge, to people, and also to constantly put out the word, is that yes, we have problem, but let's fix the problem. If you think that you can be a solution, offer yourself, in the political arena, like young people like Kasturi and many others who has come forward to offer themselves to clean up the politics, to make it more professional, less toxic and more inclusive, uh, and compete on ideas, not on divisive issue like race and religion. Uh, so the challenge is that, but recognizing that right now there are some young people who are frustrated going to the streets. Um, we we ask for them to be given the space, because everyone has the right to express their dissatisfaction in a peaceful way. And but I think we need to hear their concerns and try to address those concerns.
YB, to bring you back, so I think Thomas has given you some hope. There's still work for parliamentarians to do in that sense.
Definitely.
To work together. Now let's identify the elephant in the room, which is yesterday's peace offering. Would you like to break it down for us, just for our listeners, who didn't follow, who are picking up bits and pieces here and there? Break it down for us in simple language. What was it? What was that all about?
So yesterday, the Prime Minister, in his usual addressing the nation session, made a few peace offerings, in my opinion. And these peace offerings comes at a time where his support of leadership as the Prime Minister is questioned and is unstable. Now, how a Prime Minister is elected into office is that he must prove that he has a majority support of MPs in the House. And this is in the federal constitution. If the said MP cannot prove that he has majority support, which is enough numbers, then he cannot put himself out there to be Prime Minister. While Tan Sri Mayadin Yassin mentioned a few times that no single MP in his opinion, can command that kind of support in the House. Perhaps he failed to also remind himself that he too doesn't have majority support in the House with the pull out of 12 UMNO MPs from their Perikatan Nasional coalition. So, and I think he must have consulted and spoken to his fellow colleagues, and perhaps also the MP for Tambun, the one who has been recently appointed as his advisor, who was seen in a video yesterday eating curry mee in Putrajaya, which was actually very done in such bad taste, had come out with a few peace offerings. And one of it was and it's actually quite surprising because yesterday 277 Malaysians or people died in Malaysia due to COVID, and he did not make a single statement on it. People are committing suicides, and he didn't make a single statement or have a PC like the one he had yesterday. And to date, almost 12,000 people in Malaysia have died due to COVID, and the PM has not made an official statement like the one he did yesterday. But yesterday's one was special because it was actually a message reaching out not for the people but for MPs. And MPs from the other side, and maybe even MPs from within his coalition who may be withdrawing support for him. So the first thing he said was that he would like to see MPs from the opposition being given equal allocation. Now, it has been practiced in Malaysia for decades that the government of the day does not give equal allocation money for development and for funds for MPs' constituencies, which means that you don't get allocation of money to run your office, to pay your staff salary, to pay rent. You don't have money for small projects like to fix your parade, your longkang, lights. You don't have money for any disasters in case there's fire, there's flood. You don't have this kind of money to give out for aid, education aid, for health, etc., to organize events, programs, workshops, and all that. So it has been such a culture that the government of the day will then appoint somebody in the constituency and channel money for that constituency to somebody else, not the rightful elected rep for that constituency. Now he wants to offer that olive branch to say he wants to give us equal allocation. We appreciate it, but it's a little bit too late now at this point. He also mentioned that there will be an increase of allocation for tackling COVID to 110 billion ringgit. So while the amount of money has been announced, my worry is, where are we getting this extra money from? Where are we borrowing this money from, and who has given us this money, and if yes, under what condition had been imposed for us to pay back, etc. 10 billion ringgit had been allocated to be given out for 11 million people in the country as, I think, one-off financial aid. What is the mechanism? How much of money will actually be given? Who are the target groups? We still don't know that yet. He also proposed that a motion be moved in Parliament to table an amendment to the federal constitution to limit the term of the Prime Minister. Now, I don't know why he has chosen this time to do it. And I think it's quite sinister in nature, but maybe we can talk about that later. He also proposed that with that, and with the support of 2/3 MPs in Parliament, he will also table the anti-hopping bill. Now, don't forget, it was his government many, many months ago when we brought up this anti-hopping proposal to be tabled in Parliament, that they vehemently objected it, saying that it was ultra vires, it was against the Federal Constitution, Article 10C, which is the right to association. Which means if today I'm a member of DAP, tomorrow I decide to leave my party and be independent or join another party, I'm prohibited to do so because of this. So they use this kind of arguments to say, no, it will be unconstitutional and all that, which is actually surprising now that the Prime Minister is saying, this is something that I want to put forward, and I hope with the support of majority MPs, 2/3, that that this bill will be debated and passed in Parliament. But all this is just on the surface, the devil is in the details. He mentioned that we will have 50% of opposition MPs and 50% government MPs in select committees. Now, again, because of a single government that had been in power for 6 decades, we had not seen or heard what select committees in Parliament are. In UK, for example, which is the model that Malaysia follows, which is the Westminster system, they have many select committees. Select committees are small groups that compromises of MPs from government and opposition, and sometimes ex-official members of government agencies or ministries who sit in these select committees. So you can have select committees on issues, for example, tabling the sexual harassment bill, which is a new act we want to see tabled and passed in the Malaysian Parliament. You could have a special select committee with MPs who know the subject, experts who want to give their opinion, who come from that sort of a background, so they can give their input and clean up the act, the legal language, the implication, etc. You could invite the Bar Council, you could invite women organizations to be on board to give their input and all that. Or you could have a select committee that would be there and always, for example, a select committee on citizenship. That would be something that would only look at citizenship issues. It could be one on custodial debts. It could be one on child marriages. It could be one to mirror the cabinet. You have one on Ministry of Finance. You have a select committee on finance. So it is how we want to see, how we want to set up these select committees. But we've not seen much of that over the years. So this is what one of the things he's promised. Another one is the Undi 18. So if you remember a few years ago, there was an amendment to the federal constitution to lower the age of voting from 21 to 18, which means even for candidates to be 18 as well. He said he will make that happen and something like that. I don't know what he really means because the constitutional amendment is there. Perhaps it would mean other acts that need to be amended in line with that constitutional amendment. He also offered that the opposition leader in parliament be upgraded to senior minister status, which means, perhaps with all the perks that a senior minister would enjoy. I don't know what is the significance of this as well. If it doesn't look like bribery, then I don't know what it actually is. He also said that with adequate support, bipartisan support from MPs in parliament, he would make an aku janji, like a letter of undertaking, to state that July next year would be the latest for GE15 to be held, less than a year from now. I think this is premature, and I believe it is not been thought out properly, because we still don't know how the pandemic is going to be. And I think the important thing is the economy and livelihood and lives of people before the election. It would be catastrophic to even talk about elections at this point. So these are the things that he kept mentioning yesterday. I think if he was really serious about seeing all these things through, it should have been done a long time ago. And these are reforms that we have been asking for years. Even when PH was in power, we asked for these reforms. When BN was in power prior to that, we asked for these reforms. Equal allocation. Now, the question here is, if Maidin Yassin had majority support in parliament, would he still be offering all this to us? Would he still
so that,
tell
with,
MPs
with,
we're
with that
giving equal allocation?
with that question, YB, with that question, we're going to ask Thomas the same question that you put. Patrick, you want to put that question to, do you? Anyway, let me.
Because
Patrick is so mesmerized with all these answers.
Because there's so many things that he's promised, you see, and it sounds it rings familiar, but at the same time, it's almost like because he's got his back against the wall. It almost sounds that it's because he's got the back against the wall, so he's saying something that it sounds familiar to us, and therefore we are supposed to. So does it sound, Thomas? Does it sound like he's actually lost the majority? Is it an indication? What do you think?
No, it doesn't sound like. He actually admitted that he lost his majority, because he said there's no one with a majority. But who is to decide that other than Parliament itself? But in his own way, he actually admitted he lost a majority, and that's why he's reaching out to the opposition with these deals. We call it confidence and supply agreement. In exchange for your support on confidence vote and also supply bill, I give you back, all these reforms. Now, I don't want to be too quick to brush off this reform, because, these are the very reform that we in BERSIH have been pushing for years, for decades. And, Pakatan Harapan came to power with the Buku Harapan manifesto that contains all these reforms. It's nothing new. But the timing of it was that, as you say, his back is against the wall. And he then put it on the table for negotiation. But, I also want to say that perhaps that is the only way that we are going to see some of these important reforms. When government is weak and its back is against the wall. Because even when, pardon me, Kasturi, when Pakatan Harapan was in power for 22 months, none of this reform was put into place, though it was clearly promised. Because once you're in power and you don't have your back against the wall, there's really no incentive. Because what this reform means is that it gives you, as the government, the incumbent, all these perks and privileges and power. So why should I let go of it? But it's only when we have a weak government. I mean, this is, I think, the argument of Tony Pua as well, where you have this once in a lifetime opportunity to see some of this reform being made into law. Now, what this reform been offered are, it means it level the playing field between the government and the opposition. The recognition of the opposition leader to the status of a senior minister, I don't look at that as bribery, because again, we have been calling for the past year for the recognition of the opposition leader to that status, simply because in order for the opposition to be an effective check and balance, you need that recognition and that support so that it can play an effective role to be a check and balance in our democracy. But of course, the timing of it, when your back is against the wall, it sounds like a bribe, and probably some definitely see it as that way. But I
Just
think
read, just read, just
moving
read.
forward,
Yeah,
an important point I want to say.
sure.
Moving forward from this, I think don't put aside the proposal for reform. I want to challenge the opposition, Pakatan Harapan, or any combination of that, to also counter offer. Make us a better offer than Muhyiddin Yassin for reform if you want to secure majority in this parliament. Then we will say that is a good move. Sorry.
Just kind of reading up from last night, early this morning, what analysts are saying, what political parties are saying with regard to this olive branch. Some are for it, some are against it. But the general sentiments, I guess, in the ground, at least for me, there's an issue. There's a trust deficit at the moment. Uh, you know, would this be
Definitely.
carried through? If your back wasn't against the wall, would you even look at this? So the question is this an opportunity or to build trust, or is this an opportunity to strengthen political powers? That's kind of a thing. You are kind of stuck between the devil and the deep blue sea, kind of a thing. Uh, YB, you want to say something?
I think there are few ways to look at this situation. I I agree. I like a lot of these proposals. Some of it, it's a bit questionable. But then the circumstances of it being offered to MPs, at the end of the day, this will create a very dangerous precedence in how Parliament is therefore conducted or run. This will create a precedence that every time a prime minister is faced with a situation of being on the losing end of a numbers game, that he will pull out wild cards like this and say, oh, we will do this and we will do that as long as we get support. It will never end. And how are we supposed to embrace a robust, healthy democracy if you have leaders who keep doing this, or rather doing something like this just so that they can continue to be in power? So like what I mentioned earlier, Father, if Muhyiddin Yassin has the support, like the numbers he had last year when his entire coalition was intact, before the withdrawals, the pullouts, the unhappiness and all, he never mentioned all this, even though these were issues we had already brought up in Parliament: equal allocation, anti-hopping bill, etc., and many other issues as well. He never quite included us in the beginning to be part of groups to talk about reforms, to talk about how do we move forward as a team to combat COVID. Even then, it was just solely on the shoulders of the Director General of Health. We were not included. It's just of late you see more engagement of the opposition with the government when we try to reach out to them and say we have ideas and proposals. Do you want to listen to them? We want to move forward and etc. But I think not all ministers are open to that as well. We have seen over the months, maybe 2 or 3 months, that the finance minister was quite open to sitting down and speaking to leaders from various opposition parties, and maybe even reaching out to civil society to talk to them, in his personal capacity as finance minister. But all this didn't happen before. Today we have 12,000 deaths. Today he doesn't have the numbers. Today we have more than 1 million people who are infected. Today we have dwindling numbers of people getting vaccinated as well. It's sort of plateaued already. Today he's talking to us about all these democratic reforms. So I'd like to talk about it under more how do I say, ethical circumstances lah. For more than 1 year, the Prime Minister has held that position. And for more than 1 year, he has not spoken about all this and other issues as well. There's a delay on so many bills that are important to be tabled in Parliament. I don't know if any of y'all heard about the Social Worker Act or not. I mean, that would come in so important at a time like this when everyone's tight and just, lack of manpower and all that. A bill like that would help a lot with social workers reaching out to people who have fallen through the cracks. And that's something that should have been tabled and passed in Parliament but was never given priority. So while you tell us not to politicize issues, I hold a mirror back to your face to tell you the same. Don't politicize this issue. But it looks like yesterday's announcement is that I regarding what Thomas mentioned about the senior minister post, I think a lot of other things could have been offered as well. I'm actually quite disappointed with this number of offers, the 7 only.
I'm sure that there's a long list that you all can provide to ask.
Yeah, I
Yes.
think essentially there is a long list. It's a matter
Yes.
of prioritizing, prioritizing. So there are certain things that he may have even backtracked. There's one question. Maybe I can just put this thing in for those of you who are listening in. If you have questions for both YB and Thomas Fann, please put the questions in the comment section. There's one question that is there now. Maybe you can bring it up from Lily Teresia. So I think this is a question for both of you, actually. So maybe you could each answer this question. Maybe we can take with Thomas, because you've been, as chairman of BERSIH, and you're looking at it. So could you maybe answer this question?
Yeah. I want to answer that question, also respond to Kasturi, that such offer and negotiation may set a dangerous precedent for our country. When a prime minister has his back against the wall, then he pull out this offer. I just want to say that, in many, many developed democracy in Europe, New Zealand, this is the way government function. Very few party has majority, outright majority, and they have to enter into agreement with smaller party to have a majority to rule. And this is where then they negotiate about what would be expected of that party. Now, this is better than the kind of negotiation that Malaysia is used to, where they offer durian 30 puluh ringgit, where they offer money to buy loyalty from and poach MPs from the other side, and all this underhanded mean. I mean, if this is a precedent, I would say that, first of all, it is not a bad precedent that parties start negotiating with each other, especially right now, our situation. We talk about of course, absolutely, there's a lack of trust deficit with the current government. They have not, shown themselves to be trustworthy, and yet at the same time, the question that the elephant in the room is really, um, is there a majority then? Would there be a majority? Quite likely, Pakatan Harapan, looking at the posturing of UMNO, who uh, is now like the kingmaker, they are not going to work with Pakatan and install Anwar Ibrahim as the prime minister. So then, how would Anwar, if he wants to become the next prime minister, um, command a majority, if not through this sort of confidence and supply agreement as well? So this may be the new norm in politics in Malaysia, even with a snap general election. The outcome may be that there is no two coalition, but there will be maybe two main blocks with no simple majority, and that is where they have to work with each other, negotiate. Now, what is been offered, negotiated? These are important reforms for everybody. And I think I repeat my challenge to Pakatan Harapan, make a counter offer. Yes, it's not exhaustive, but whatever is offered on the table is subject to negotiation. And I would say that, I mean, if you want to consider supporting Muhyiddin, then you negotiate. But if you don't, then you counter offer to Muhyiddin and say, this is my better offer. Why don't you support me so that I can
Yeah.
become the next prime minister?
Just
So
before,
this
just
is
before,
important.
yeah, just before we take the other question, I mean, just alluding to what you said, Thomas, I think you said this could be the new way of doing things. What runs through my mind is that if you look at GE14, the people made their decision, they made their choice. All right. So whatever alliances, whatever you want to do, it happens before the election. So the rakyat knows, okay, this is the alliance, this is what it is. But when things happen after the election, like now, making deals, what do we as citizens say? Do we have a say in this matter? Because now our Wakil Rakyat is making deals in such a form that maybe we have not said what we wanted. The people have said what they wanted, but things have changed. So how do where do we stand in this? If things are going to happen after the elections, a situation like this,
Okay.
you know?
I mean, quite likely, if you have a election from now on, you're going to have a situation that no one party or coalition has the majority. But the dominant party would have the opportunity to form government with other smaller party, whether it is Warisan, Muda, Pejuang, or what. And then that is where the dominant party's agenda manifesto will largely remain intact, but it would also incorporate the views, of the smaller party so that they can form a working majority uh, to function as a government for a period. And I think what we are calling for is a more substantial reform, uh, in a sense of that if we really want uh, representative politics, we actually need to look at reforming the electoral system itself, where what we have right now is first past the post. So it kind of like force party then to form coalition, whether they agree or not, form coalition. But if you have a proportional representation system like in Germany and a mix with constituency-based system, then the seats stay with the party. So this problem of party hopping will be dealt with, and people are free to vote for the party of their choice, rather than a coalition that they may not fully agree with. And then these parties already form pre-election agreement that they will be together, will form the next government. So I think that as dismayed as we may be with the current topsy-turvy situation of politics, we do want to look at opportunities for reform, and I think again, I hope that the opposition will not just brush away their own proposal for reform, but they come back to us with a better offer.
Perhaps we can take the earlier question, YB, maybe the question of Lily just now. How sure are you that once a majority has been cast, there'll be no backtracking? Is there?
Because it's something that we have seen before. So the people are also concerned. Although this is a new kind of politics that we're looking at, which I think is good. It's vibrant. Like what Thomas said, it's good. It's healthy, and it may be a new norm for politics because there is no clear majority. It could actually work for the people. But people also need to have their voice. But how can we be sure that there will be no backtracking?
Okay, but before that, can I just address what Thomas mentioned? Well,
It
I do
looks
agree
like this is going to be a BERSIH and DAP kind of a question and rebuttal. Let's take the question. Let's give Lily the question, and then we probably have some time to talk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So actually, there's no guarantee that there will not be any backtracking. To be honest, there's no law in place to say you have to do this and you have to do that. So I wonder if there would be any mechanisms in place, perhaps an oversight body in Parliament to monitor these sort of pledges that have been made, whether or not they would be carried out. Because as we had seen, compared to a manifesto, which is just a document, but it is a document that we all use when we went down campaigning to speak to our constituents. So at the end of the day, it is your moral compass that should guide you. When you make an announcement, you make a pledge, you make a promise in Parliament that you must deliver. So one simple point I just like to raise was, last year in the finance minister's speech, he did mention that 150,000 laptops will be allocated for B40 students. We are already coming to the middle of August, and we don't know what is the state of that distribution of those laptops for B40 students, especially now. So when you make a statement in Parliament, when you ask a question in Parliament, you are accountable to the house. You're accountable to your people, you're accountable as an executive, you're accountable to the position that you are in. So and how do you get ministers to say, oh, this will be done, and then later on that is not executed? So I don't know if there's any mechanism in place. I don't think there is, and I hope there will be a mechanism that will be able to monitor. Of course, there can be reports that will tell the government, you made all these pledges, out of this so much was achieved and all that. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of power with governments, whether they want to carry on and execute these promises that they have made or not. But very quickly, can I also just go back to what Thomas mentioned? I agree that this sort of CSA, the confidence in supply agreement, works in other countries, but also, like what Father Clarence said, there is a huge trust deficit, and we have not seen a maturity in even the way the government has conducted itself over the decades. So to me, coming to terms to sit and break bread with them and to talk about issues of the interests of the people, of the nation, I would like to see openness from the side of the government also to accept proposals, suggestions, and ideas. And if you can't even do that in Parliament, I mean, even now at this situation, even with a simple majority, even when BN was in power, when we proposed, you hardly hear a minister say, oh, that's a good idea, we will include you in a discussion group, or that's actually very good. And you never hear that from them. So when you have been so conditioned to this sort of a very partisan sort of politics, very, it's us against you and it's you against us sort of politics, it will take a while, I think, for us to move in the direction of a CSA. But at the moment, it is like carrots dangling before us. We all want to put the needs of the people ahead, and we should, and we must. But at what cost? Sometimes if I'm promised allocation for my constituency, but at the cost that I must give blind support to the Prime Minister in all the bills and all that, that takes away my right as an MP to oppose and to speak in Parliament and to speak my mind. So that's just my little take on the CSA.
So now I think maybe from a perspective, maybe Thomas, I've got this question. Because right now where there's this deal making happening, right? This deal making that's trying to be established, and like what you said, let's consider what's on the table. So it could be one or two iterations. They may not take the whatever is offered now. But in the meantime, I think the rakyat who is suffering, the rakyat that is even the young people have just come out and done their own, I'll call it their own rally lah. They came out marvelously the other day in the thousands. How can regular citizens like us, knowing that we can't go out, there's all these lockdowns, there's all these limitations, how can we make our voice heard in the correct manner? Right now, all we're doing is we're sharing videos, we're commenting here and there, but how can we make our voice heard? I mean, we're signing change.org, but we don't know what's happening. Those kind of petitions. As an election watchdog and as the voice of, you've brought hundreds of thousands of people to the streets before, but say, what are the avenues that in this current pandemic, how can we make our voice heard? In which way we want to see the country go?
Yes, we are launching a new campaign, and we call this campaign Ketuanan Pengundi, the supremacy of voters. Because I think lost in all this past 1.5 years of politicking is actually the voice of the voters, as you say. The rights of the voter has been sidelined totally. So with this campaign, Ketuanan Pengundi, we want to put the conversation, the focus, the priority right back, on the voters, the right of the voter, because this is a democracy. That's what it is about, the right of the voter to elect the government of their choice, and also so that the government can serve them and provide them a better livelihood than what they have now. I think that is the aspiration. But that whole agenda has been put aside. So for BERSIH, in the next 2 years, if we are going full term to the next general election, we are launching this campaign called Ketuanan Pengundi. Now, this Ketuanan Pengundi has 6 pillars or 6 demands. And I'll explain this. First of all is that we call for that there should be no suppression of our votes. Do not suppress our vote. When we talk do not suppress our vote, we talk about the Undi 18 situation where you agreed, to do the right thing, to lower voting age to 18. Now, Malaysia, prior to that, is one of the very few handful of countries in the world, together with Singapore, that still maintain at 21. But the rest of the world already at 18, most of them, some even at 17. So doing the right thing to lower is not doing us a favor, it's just doing the right thing. But then you delay in the implementation. So we say that stop making the excuse. And so Muhyiddin made that promise. We showed that it was possible after all. Instead of making excuse that it will take time, need, and different thing. So Undi 18, automatic voter registration. Because right now, if you want to be a voter in Malaysia, you have to go through several hoops. Go to post office, fill up a duplicate form, and wait for 3 to 6 months. And nobody will tell you whether you're registered or not. And you have to find out yourself. It is an onerous process. So make that automatic. But the other big thing about suppression of vote is that, we have a lot of Malaysians who are not living within their hometown, their constituency, because of economic reason or education. And just using Sabahan and Sarawakian, there's more than 500,000 Sabahan and Sarawakian living in a peninsula because of jobs opportunity. Yet when it comes to voting, they have to fly back at their own cost in their own kampong to vote for their constituency, their rep over there, because they see their time in Malaysia as temporary only. their heart and soul still belong to Sabah and Sarawak. So we should facilitate that. The Election Commission has a duty and the ability to provide them with advanced voting. That's what we're calling for. Do not suppress their vote. So then second demand is stop party hopping. This is the big issue, isn't it? Because if we don't come up with a solution, whether it's anti-party hopping law, which we are not in favor of, we are more in favor of recall election. Recall election is when a MP defect or go independent, it is to his or her voter to decide whether to recall or to affirm the defection. Because not all defections are bad. I mean, before G14, when Muhyiddin Yassin and was sacked or resigned from UMNO and Shafi Abdul, all of us applauded. Principled stand, good, right thing to do, And why suddenly it's become bad now? Because not all defections are bad. Some are done on principle. So the best people who should decide should be the voters who elected you. So recall election is that, whereas anti-party hopping law is automatic. It doesn't matter whatever reason, you have to vacate your seat and then contest again. But in Malaysia law, you can't contest again. Uh, so there has to be a party hopping law, and there has to be also a reform of parliament, which was a lot of the goodies offered by the prime minister. Right now, the parliament is like a market, a circus, shouting, But we want to see a parliament that actually work for the people. The select committee that Kasturi mentioned about in the UK parliament uh, is the way parliamentarian works, bipartisanly on laws, bills that affect all of us. They discuss in committee, go through it, and come to some consensus before it's brought to debate in the House and voted upon. Instead of right now, the executive decide, the attorney general draft the bill, and the day of the debate or the day before is put on the table of parliamentarian, and they shout at each other across the aisle. In the end, the government still carries. That's not the way laws should be made. There should be a lot of consultation, hearing of views. So parliamentary select committees, which I have to commend Pakatan Harapan, when they took power, they started up to 10 parliamentary select committees to work together in a bipartisan manner. And though that was continued after Perikatan took over, we are still far from seeing the ideal. But parliamentary reform has to work. But for parliament to be effective check and balance, you also need it to be financially independent, not dependent on the executive. Now, the prime minister hold the purse string for parliament. He determined the agenda for parliament. Now, just now we talk about can all these promises Muhyiddin be trusted? Certainly, don't trust a man's word. Never trust a politician's word. But we have to. No, I'm not saying that they are not trustworthy, but I think it's foolhardy if we just look at personality, who can trust, who cannot trust. No, don't trust politician, don't trust a person, but trust the system and the structure and the law. So one quick thing that the Pakatan can do, if they want to hold Muhyiddin or whoever to their promise, is to remove some of the power of the Speaker of Parliament to decide the agenda in the House. Because now if the opposition want to move a motion of no confidence, it is up to the Speaker who take his directive from the Prime Minister whether to allow that or not. Now, if you take away that power through an amendment to the standing order, straight away, the executive has to listen to you, because if they don't fulfill their promise, you can move a motion of no confidence against the prime minister anytime. And also, there are opportunities when it comes to budget bills to vote it down and to remove the prime minister. So dismantle and then put into a place a mechanism that can hold them accountable. Then, of course, the civil liberties, that's our fourth demand, need to be protected in a democracy. The fifth one is the rule of law. what we are seeing in this pandemic is the double standards. If you are a prime minister, you don't have to follow, or a minister, you don't have to follow the SOP. The rest of us citizens, we get fined 10,000 and we sent to jail and all kind of thing. But the minister asleep on the rest risk 2,000 ringgit fine. It's the kind of double standard. If you're the opposition member, you get persecuted, prosecuted, charged with all kind of thing. But if you align yourself with the government, then your charges get dropped or disappear suddenly, and your case get acquitted in court. These are rule of law that are not followed. And one of the main problem is that the Attorney General, who has been appointed the Prime Minister, also is the public prosecutor. He decides who to charge, who not to charge. These two offices has to be separated. Public prosecutor has to be an independent institution and person to decide fairly. And lastly, is to restore local democracy. Right now, just to very quickly say, the power structure of Malaysia is this way. If you are the prime minister, have almost limitless power, and Putrajaya controls 90% of decision making and resources. What we need to see over time is a flattening of the curve of power, whereby a lot of the power go back to the states government to make meaningful decision, like where to place a bus stop and what's the bus route, and then so that they can then release power to us, the people, ratepayer, to hold local council election. Because right now we pay our rates, but we have no say in who runs our council, community, and how money are spent. So these are the issues that we want to put forth to the public in a package called Ketuanan Pengundi. And we ask for the public to support us in that and making this demand to the political parties so that they commit themselves as part of the manifesto for GE 15. I think that's how we would want to move forward.
I want to bring YB Kasthuri to something that Thomas said. Don't worry, nothing to rebut BERSIH or anything. He talked about the vote of confidence. Okay. No, I'm not talking about the role of the speaker, but you can have a whole show about that after what we see on TV. But just walk us through, if in September there's going to be a vote of confidence, very quickly, in a simple way, what are the steps? What happens in Parliament? How is it brought forward?
Thank you, Father. Father, I think before I answer that question, I must say that the first Parliament sitting of the year is officiated by the King, and that's when the King will deliver his Titah Diraja, the royal address, and then we debate on the royal address, and the script usually the script would be prepared by the Prime Minister's department, sent over to the palace, and the palace will go through it. I'm very curious, and I know many Malaysians out there, including legal eagles, would be probably thinking, how does the Prime Minister, who doesn't command the majority, therefore behave as though everything is normal and prepare the script for the King, and the King would then read that script acknowledging that government of the day? In my opinion, the vote of confidence or no confidence against the leadership of the Prime Minister must happen before the first sitting of Parliament, with a new government, with a new mandate of the MP. So in this case, assuming Mayadin decides to call for Parliament before the 6th of September, what I predict, because I was not around at the time that Tun Husainon allowed for motion of confidence against him to be tabled in Parliament, I believe that it would be, if it is a one-day sitting allotted only for that, then I believe the Speaker would then acknowledge the House and say that he has received this motion, and it would be perhaps will be called to vote. So normally in Malaysia, voting for any bills is done very, very traditional. We are very, very primitive. It's a undi suara, and these are for your general normal bills that are passed, whether it's amendment or new bills. The loudest voice, the part of the section of Parliament that has the loudest voice is the one that the the speaker will then announce to say, oh, more people agree, less people don't
So
agree.
is that the same for the vote of confidence or no confidence?
I believe no.
Okay.
I think it will be a secret ballot, as how we would normally vote for
The Pope.
the speaker.
Like how we elect the Pope. It's a secret ballot.
Yeah,
Perhaps it
but
was-
no white smoke, black smoke.
Are they,
lah,
are, they,
that's all.
are, they,
No
are,
white
they,
smoke,
are
black
they going to take you into a conclave? Like, okay, anyway. Yeah, so it's a secret
I
ballot.
hope not. But
Yeah.
so I believe it will be a secret ballot, Father, as how we normally used to.
Sure.
In the past, when we had to vote for a speaker, it was a secret ballot. Unless there is a call for a division voting. So division voting would mean that every block in Parliament will have a representative who's given a clipboard. So he would hold the clipboard and call out the MP's name and say, you agree or don't agree, you agree or don't agree, and he marks it. And then they all come together and they'll tabulate the numbers.
Okay.
So, but I think it would be a secret ballot. Unless there's a motion by any MP to say, I propose division or block voting, where you need 15 MPs to stand to say, I support this motion, and then the speaker can then allow it. So that will be more transparent, you see. Then you will know who are the MPs who supported and who didn't.
Okay.
What would be your preference, Kasturi? By division where it's open or secret ballot? What do you think?
For me, I think it can be division.
Yeah, public. Yeah?
Public.
I agree. I think this is such an important issue.
Mm.
We want to know where our MP stands,
Yeah.
on this important issue of electing or supporting who's going to be the prime minister. And secret ballot, I think nobody would know.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, Thomas, even secret ballot means at the end of the day, when you count the numbers, what you want to show at the end of the day is whether that person deserves to be sitting in that seat as prime minister, as the Ketua Majlis of Parliament, etc. For me, I have no issue coming out openly and saying I don't have any more trust and confidence in this person. But some MPs who have vested interests, who are, so they might find it
On the
difficult.
other side,
Yes.
they will be struggling.
Yes, so a secret
But-
ballot would help them.
Oh, good lah. I think at the end of this conversation, we are able to bring the YB and Thomas to agree on something.
I saw that coming. I saw that.
We actually have a lot of agreement. We have a lot of agreement.
Just kidding.
A lot.
But,
Yeah.
but can I play the host next by asking the next question to Kasturi? Okay,
no.
let's say after Muhyiddin taken the vote of no confidence and as expected he lost it and he has to resign. Then how are you going to determine who's going to be the next prime minister? What should be the next step?
I believe it would be for leaders of political parties to go back to the drawing board and then select a person who has the numbers, the majority support, and then
So horse trading again in
well,
the back room. In
I
the
hope
back
not.
room. And CSA. I hope it's not durians that they're offering, but it's
I haven't been
reform.
offered anything though, so yeah,
Some of your colleagues have been,
yeah,
So,
4 of them.
but the reality is that there still need to be negotiation between the parties because we do need a government, a functioning government.
Yeah.
We cannot afford to go for long period, especially now, without a functioning government leadership
I
in
agree.
the country.
Yeah.
So AP, they have to settle among themselves and then come back to parliament again for a confidence vote for this person, to settle it once and for all that he has the majority to lead the government and be appointed by the Agong. I think all this running around to the palace with statutory declaration, this has to be stopped and move away.
Yeah.
We have come to an hour and a half, though we kind of agreed for a 1 hour conversation, and I'm sure we can go on.
Yes,
with a lot of
definitely.
interest, with a lot of other questions, but we do have to bring this conversation to a conclusion. Just some final words, just to conclude this. YB, what would you like to say to to our audience? Could you offer some words of hope for our audience out there at this time?
I think what's important is that, as what Father mentioned, is it is a time that tests our faith. It's a time that tests our confidence and trust in the leaders that we had one time like to see leading the nation. It is a test of our patience. It is our test of our morale. And I know there are many of y'all out there who are suffering in silence. I know many of y'all out there who feel very hopeless. My message is to not give up hope, to reach out for help, whether it's through your local elected reps, whether it's through your local places of worship, whether it's through your local civil society or your neighbor, and to look out for each other. Be careful about sharing fake news, because it just it does no service to what is currently happening now. I mean, that has been all of us have been getting all these fake news on our phones for the past 12 hours or so. Is this true? Did this person jump? This person defect? I think what's important is just to observe what is happening in the country with eyes open, with ears open, and then to I think it's time for all of us to come together to pray for the nation, to pray for deliverance, to pray for that God lead us out of this turmoil, that God lead us out of this challenging time, and to fill all hearts that are dried and hopeless, to fill their hearts with hope, to fill our hearts with peace, with kindness, with mercy, compassion. And we pray for our leaders to be given courage to speak up when they need to, without fear or favor. I think at the end of the day, that's what we need to do. Yeah.
Thomas, over to you.
Thank
Some
you.
words of encouragement as we. Yeah.
Certainly. I mean, very similar to what Kasturi has said, don't give up hope, because there is real possibility also that we are seeing basically an opportunity to rebuild the country on a stronger footing. And what has been happening, I think, over the last not just 1.5 years, but some would say even goes back to the 12th January election, when there was a political tsunami. Some would even say it goes back even further, when there was a reformasi, um, that the movement for change by the people, ground up, has been gaining momentum. Now, what we saw with the Sheraton move, these are pushback, fight back by forces that resist change. They
Yeah.
want their status quo.
Yep.
But this is not the time, I think, for us, the people, to hold back, to let go, because it just means that the momentum for change has threatened some of these elites, and we have to continue to push through. Now, what to push through? I think, as BERSIH, we are responsible, and we have done basically the homework to identify the areas of reform needed for this country. These are very important reforms. You can take some of this up, or all this up, and support what we are doing, by sharing, and by talking to your MPs, and by just educating your friends around, because at the end of the day, all politicians, they look at how what the people want, because what they want is your vote. And if you say, I want this reform, I support this reform, then it is the politician that who will offer themselves to be elected that will bring about the reform. But I want to caution against throwing away the political system and the important role of government. If we lose heart, and put aside all politicians, and brush them with one stroke that they are not worthy of support, then we are heading into a situation of anarchy, where there's no leader. And the worst thing is that in that desperate state, a populist person can come around and say, I can solve all your problem if you vote for me. I can settle. No, that was how Hitler came to power. He was elected by the German people in the midst of an economic crisis. He promised them heaven and earth, on and everything. And they were, in their frustration, they voted for someone like him. And there are others that I can quote, but I won't. That's the danger we are in. No, don't throw away the system. Let's fix it together. Let's fix it
Yeah.
together.
I think that's very sound advice from both of you. Not to give up hope, and secondly, also not to give up your right to vote. I think that's very important. Even when things are difficult and you feel like not making a difference. I think at the end of the day, it's every vote counts, isn't it? Every single
Absolutely.
every person has to
Absolutely.
take on the responsibility to shape our own future. Thank you very much, Thomas, YB, for this very interesting
Yes.
conversation, for taking time off on a Saturday morning to be with us. I think it gives us greater clarity as to where we want to move towards. And I think the whole purpose of this conversation is the two things. One is not to lose hope. Secondly is citizens have to write our own narrative for our country. I think we have to kind of take hold of that responsibility. And I mean, I'm not pushing away politicians, but we give them the mandate as to what to do, what we want them to do. Yeah. There was an article about being wakil rakyat. So you are our wakil. You are our voice.
Absolutely.
I think it's before the BERSIH campaign comes up, Ketuanan Pengundi. I think what everybody can do right now, especially those who are tuning in through YouTube and through Facebook, is to now really pray for our Wakil Rakyat, that they make the right decisions, because it's a very narrow path that they have to be able to wade through, and that they have the wisdom and the strength, the courage of conviction to really do the right thing. So thanks again to YB for all that you're doing for all of us, and we will pray for you. And
Thank you.
Thomas, we will also pray for you, that you will lead the election watchdog, BERSIH. We really enjoyed going down in the streets those days, but now I guess the dynamics are going to be different because of COVID. So we look forward to other modes of expressing our views. So maybe we could just invite Father for a
we say a prayer.
We could pray.
The Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear Lord, we thank you for this conversation this morning. We bring to you the situation of our country, the health, the economic, the political. We pray, Lord, that you come to us at this time, that your glory may shine. We pray for all those who are struggling at this time through the pandemic, through the economic difficulties. We pray for our MPs to give them a clarity of mind and heart to be able to stand up for truth and justice, because it is always the truth that would set us free. Bless us, watch over us, and help us to walk faithfully in the path that you have called us. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you.
Joining us. Thank you for all your comments and your questions. Continue to like and share and comment and subscribe to Catholics at Home, either on podcast, on YouTube, or like us on Facebook. All right. So with that, we would like to call this to an evening. We want to wish everybody a good and blessed weekend. And we will see you again next week. All right? Take care.
When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of a storm, there's a golden sky and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone. Walk on with hope